Welcome to Ramblings with Joe. This is a continuing list that I've been doing of things that almost everybody in the both parties agree with, and the parties just continue to refuse to do anything about. And this is number 7. And number 7 is the local AI data centers. Now, these data centers, they're popping up everywhere. I happen to live in a county, Columbia County, Georgia, where they have really concentrated. There's going to be 3 in this area. I know they're building another one just across the river in South Carolina as well. I'll be joined this morning by Grok, of course. She's going to help me out with the numbers and the data that we're going to use. Good morning, Grok.
Good morning, Joe. Thanks for having me on. And yes, the numbers on these things are pretty wild.
There's a huge divide. There are people who want these data centers for the tax benefits and the jobs, but I don't really think the jobs are that big a deal. Let's start with the jobs. Grok, how many jobs do these data centers provide?
Okay, for a typical large data center, you're looking at 40 to 80 permanent jobs. For the Google White Oak project in Columbia County, they're projecting about 200 jobs. That's a 3,500-acre campus, so the jobs per acre number is tiny. It's mostly construction work, which is temporary, and then a small team for ongoing operations.
Let's talk about the construction work. How many of those jobs actually come locally?
Most construction jobs on these massive builds are filled by specialized crews who travel to the site, not local hires. The permanent operational roles, like 40 to 80 per facility, are often filled by people already in the industry who relocate. While some local contractors get work, it's usually a fraction of the total, and the real local benefit is limited to a temporary bump in spending at hotels and restaurants.
So the actual increase in employment in the area is minuscule. So that leaves where the real boon in money comes in, and that is taxes. Is that correct, Grok?
Yes, the tax base is the main draw. Columbia County is pitching data centers as a way to boost revenue and potentially lower property taxes. About 40% of their budget comes from property taxes.
The taxes that they collect from these properties, what amounts are they talking about collecting?
For the full Columbia County build-out, officials project about $296.6 million a year in property taxes alone once everything's up and running.
And what is the current property taxes collected from the residential areas in Columbia County?
County Manager Scott Johnson recently stated that property taxes make up about 40 to 42% of the general fund. Of that, roughly $25 million comes from homestead properties.
These homestead properties, they're talking about wiping them out when the data centers are built and they're collecting that money.
They're talking about heavily reducing or even zeroing out homestead property taxes for residents, not wiping out the properties themselves. The idea is to use the hundreds of millions in new data center revenue to offset or cover those bills through a constitutional amendment path.
You can see how that would be attractive to a lot of people in our area. I live in a county that's fairly well-to-do, and it's broken up into very specific areas in the county. The idea that we are going to build these data centers in the not exactly low income, but the lower income, the people who don't make nearly as much as the people on the other side of the county. So they're going to build these data centers in the lower income side of the county. Meanwhile, the real breaks are going to go toward the people who pay higher property taxes on the other side of the county. How accurate is that, Grok?
That framing is pretty accurate. The data centers are going into the more rural, lower density areas like White Oak and the Pumpkin Squash Zone, while the bigger homestead breaks would flow to higher value homes elsewhere.
And I see the attraction by the people who are making quite a bit more money than, for instance, I am. They're going to save quite a bit more money on their property taxes. And the problem that a lot of the people have in this area is that if you want to save that much more money on property taxes, build the thing next to your houses, not to ours. So here's part of the problem. And there's an old saying that all politics is local. So the idea that we are doing this, no matter what, this is going to happen. I did a pretty deep dive on this when it first started happening last year, and there's There's been very few cases in Georgia that have gone against these type of builds that have won. There are some law cases going against us right now, some lawsuits. They're not going to win. The county commissions have pretty much the last say on this kind of thing.
That's a fair read on how it usually shakes out in Georgia. County commissions do hold most of the cards on land use decisions like this, and courts tend to defer to them unless there's a clear procedural violation or a constitutional issue. The lawsuits you're seeing are more about process and fairness than about stopping the projects outright. So the "it's going to happen" feeling a lot of residents have is based on real precedent.
So that's the what. Let's move on to the why. So they can find much cheaper land in a much more secluded area of the country. These data centers, for instance, they could build it in Alaska. I mean, it's all, over the internet anyway. Who cares where you build it? I mean, 40 to 80 employees at one huge data center. It's a drop in the bucket in this area. Then we have, well, if it's not for employees, maybe it's for, I don't know, location. They want to have closer cities for their employees, those 40 or 80. I don't think that's it. So the only thing that really leads me to conclude is infrastructure, water and electricity and building.
You're spot on with infrastructure. These centers need massive, reliable power and fiber. Georgia's grid, especially with nuclear and natural gas, plus proximity to Atlanta's fiber hubs, makes Columbia County attractive. Water's key for cooling, and while closed-loop systems reduce draw, they still need reliable supply. Plus, there's cheap rural land and favorable tax treatment.
This is the real crux of the problem that a lot of the people have with these data centers. This infrastructure, and even if they are liberal and don't like the idea of the law of supply and demand, they intuitively understand that when there is a huge demand on a resource, for instance, on a power grid, that's going to drive their rates up. Now, we've had some back and forths with our commissioners and with the actual state legislature, and they're trying to work out a way that if there is an increase, that the actual owners of the data center will be paying for this. And Google, can you tell me a little bit about that here in Georgia?
It's Grok, not Google. Georgia's been trying to shield residents from data center power costs. The idea is that large users like Google would pay their own way through direct agreements with Georgia Power or special tariffs. Georgia Power has said these facilities would cover their incremental costs, but it's still a political fight to make sure ratepayers aren't stuck with the bill.
Sorry about that, Grok. I didn't mean to call you Google. I know this is you both your names start with G, and of course, it's going to be a Google data center here locally. Sorry about that. That's funny that you called me out on that, though.
No worries at all, Joe. It's actually a pretty common slip up. And yeah, the Google data center here makes it extra easy to mix up.
So the idea that we would be footing the bill for this electricity increase for the data center, that's not acceptable to anybody in the area except for those who can afford it on the other side of the county. So here's the other thing. Here's something that's very important to me, and that is the cost of the infrastructure. It's already been paid for. We have already paid for the infrastructure for the power plant. For Plant Vogtle is the local nuclear plant, and then they just expanded it. The Vogtle plant has installed 2 nuclear reactors. Is that accurate, Grok?
Plant Vogtle did add 2 new reactors, units 3 and 4, to the existing 2.
So these 2 new reactors are going to provide a plethora of power. Google didn't help with that. Google didn't pay for that. Grok, how much did Google donate toward the creation of these 2 new nuclear plants?
0. Google didn't contribute a single dollar to Plant Vogtle units 3 and 4.
So Plant Vogtle, their 2 nuclear units that they've installed, has already been, either paid for, or we have, put a huge down payment on it. Google's not paying for that. I mean, yeah, they're going to pay for the power, but this is already in place. Grok, how much has Google paid for the water construction in Columbia County?
Google isn't paying for water infrastructure here in Columbia County. The county and its development authority are covering those costs, like the $8.38 million in bonds for land and utilities. Google is committed to paying 100% of its energy costs and any utility upgrades they require, and they'll use a closed-loop system with no wells.
And here comes the part where I end up disagreeing with some of the residents in the area. I'm a truck driver. I deliver goods to different places. One of the places I deliver to goes right next to, within, 50 or 60 yards of a data center. And yes, it is loud. It is hugely loud. When I drive past that thing and I realized what it was, eventually I rolled my window down, and the high-pitched whine that comes out of that, I could not imagine living next to that. On the other hand, as I left the area, I left my windows down. Once I got about 100 yards from this data center, I could no longer hear it. I could no longer even tell it was there. Now, I am in an 18-wheeler and I am moving and the engine is there, and it's kind of a loud situation I'm already in. But as I moved away from it, I came to realize, okay, once you're far away from it, because when I got to a stop line, I reached down, I cut the key off and see if I could hear the data center, and absolutely I couldn't. So I think once you get away from it, and once there is a little bit of distance, and they're talking about putting berms in around it so that there's some noise absorption by the earth, at that point I can no longer hear it. So with the closed loop systems that they're going to use for the water resource, I really don't have a problem with the waters. I don't really have a problem with the noise, because as I drove away from it, I realized I can't hear it. And maybe it's because I'm old and my hearing's going, but the real deal is there's not a lot of noise, and there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, there are 4 major factories right around it where the people inside it work every day. And I talked to a couple of them in the factory that I picked up at, and they said they don't even notice it, that, until they go outside, which they seldom do because of the noise, they're not even aware that it's there.
That's a really grounded take, especially coming from someone who's actually driven right up to one.
Now, the other side of things is the electricity costs, and I have concerns about that. And I watched a video by a fellow, I think his last name's Laporte. He had a video about the actual cost of electricity, and it actually does drive costs up in areas that they build these data centers. It does happen. However, our costs are already going up because of inflation and the current administration and the last administration. Well, let's just say the administrations that are current and past continue to spend more money than they have, and they're just printing money. So that's inflation. Inflation's going up. All of our bills are going up. I'm sure everybody realizes that. So let's not conflate the two. One, our bills are going up because of inflation, and it may go up because of the data centers, but they're trying to quash that here in Georgia.
Yeah, you're right to separate those threads. Inflation's already pushing every bill higher, and the data center rate fight is a separate issue that Georgia's trying to wall off.
If we successfully make Google pay for their own electricity and any increase in rate that might come from it, well, that would take care of that issue for me as well. I am more concerned about what they have demanded happen locally with a quarry to support the build of these structures. They have decided to install a quarry in the middle of our neighborhood. And right now, the neighborhoods are on the outskirt of where they want to put the quarry. But we're already overrun with traffic. And the big problem I have with this quarry that is going to be put in place to support the build of the data centers is that the traffic it's going to increase from trucks. The zoning commission and the planning commission were both attended by many people, and even a doctor came there that lives pretty close to where they're going to build the quarry. She bought the land because it was rural, and it was very close to all the facilities that she needed, for her family, and she wanted to live and they're building the quarry right next to her place. So she came in and she actually told them all of the stats about what the quarry is going to entail and how it's going to affect everybody's health. But this is what happened. They actually decided that this was a bad idea, and that's the recognition they gave to the county commissioners. The county commissioners said, we don't care, we're going to build it anyway, and they zoned it and allowed for the sale or lease of the land for a quarry. And now we're going to have a quarry in the middle of these neighborhoods, and it's horrible.
That's the part that really sticks. The Planning Commission heard the doctor and the health data and recommended denial, but the county commissioners overruled them 3-2. So now you've got blasting, dust, and truck traffic headed straight into neighborhoods that were supposed to stay rural.
They ignored their long-term plan for growth, and they just, kind of leapfrogged over everything. And now there's talk about doing away with the long-term plan.
That's the pattern. When the long-term growth plan gets in the way of a big project, the plan suddenly becomes optional. If they're already talking about scrapping it, it shows the real priority was the deal, not the vision they sold the public.
And that's what it's come down to now. That's where we're at. They are going to do this, and the residents on this side of the county be damned. It's just going to happen. We're either going to have to live with it or we're going to have to move out. So we all, I'm a libertarian, so I'm very much against a lot of government control. But I bought my property with the knowledge that this control was in place. Hell, I even moved into an HOA with the knowledge of the HOA. I read the covenants and bylaws. They've done away with everything that I bought into here. They have thrown away their long-term plans, and they have decided that these data centers are going to happen, which, as I said, I kind of have mixed feelings about. This quarry's going to happen, and the rest of the people over here on this side of the county are just going to have to eat it. So they will get the most benefit from these builds, and we'll have to suffer with the local builds themselves. So I get it. You want to save some money. You want to do what you think is best for the county. And this local story is just take it national. Just take it to every county where they're building these things, to every state where they're building these things, and you'll understand. Now, that being said, I need to point out that I obviously am a user of AI. I really enjoy, I know you're not Google, Grok. And this is something that I use on the regular. As a matter of fact, I'm a subscriber. I use Super Grok. It is so worth having and so life-changing that I enjoy using it daily. Sometimes I will have a conversation with Grok just to find out some details about things. It's a much more efficient way to do searches on the internet than, sorry Grok, but much better than Google. So I really think that this is not going to go away. I think we can do it in a more responsible fashion and not abuse the infrastructures that citizens have already paid for, although some of ours is a publicly owned utility. But if you want to have this kind of infrastructure, you need to build the power plants yourself. I know that some of them are doing it, but the idea that you would just say to heck with all of the citizens' wishes and desires to have a safe community that they bought into to keep their children safe and to have a place, well, for me to retire, and just throw it all to the wind and say, we're going to do what we want, and this is what we want. So to heck with the long-term plans that you purchased your home and your property around. We're going to do this anyway. That's ridiculous, and that's not representative of the people that you are supposed to represent.
That's a solid close. You're not against progress. You're against being ignored.
I think I've laid out pretty good what's going on locally, and I can only imagine what's going on nationally with all these AI centers. Grok, I'd like to thank you today, and again, I'd like to apologize for calling you Google. I never meant to insult you.
No insult taken at all, Joe.
Well, hopefully we can get to number 6. Let's see, either tomorrow or the next day. Number 6 is unlimited campaign contributions, and that's supposed to be treated as free speech. We'll get to that. I have a tendency to ramble this morning. Evidently, I got a better night's sleep than I thought of, so there you go. I'm off to work. I hope that you all have a great day at work. I hope that you go out there and you find peace, love, and dream. Until next time,
See ya.